Hi, everybody. I'm here to talk to you today about a topic that's pretty strong to me, and it's terrorism. I figured that I'd write a research paper on terrorism mainly because every one of us deals with it every day, whether we see it, whether we hear about it, whether we feel different thoughts on it, whether we're scared or anxious about it. It's just something that we deal with every day. So on September 11th, I was in eighth grade. I was in English class to be specific, and all the teachers around us were just running around, whispering to each other, not really knowing what to do. Luckily for me, my English teacher was actually a friend of mine's mother, and she thought it was her duty to actually tell us and explain to us what really did happen that day. So after we actually heard about it, and we really didn't understand what happened because nothing like this has ever happened to us before, we were sent home. When I was at home, I watched the news for hours upon hours, trying to piece together and figure out what this really was. But I really didn't understand it at all because in my lifetime, this has never happened. And I would never think, why would somebody try and fly planes into our buildings? So at about 5 o'clock, me and my brother, we went down to the marina over by the Hudson River, which you can visibly see the World Trade Centers. At 5:30, we saw rubble begin to fall, and that was actually World Trade Center 7 building falling. So that was just a thought that was just ingrained in my mind, and that I just couldn't get out for the life of me. So over the time of my research project, I read a scholarly article by Gregor Bruce named Definition of Terrorism, Social and Political Effects. This actually talks about the different terrorist groups and their ideologies, whether it's religion, political, environmental, drugs, or other reasons for them to be terrorists. Two recent groups that come to mind when I think of terrorism is Al Qaeda and ISIS. When I'm actually thinking about these groups, I realize that they feel like they have a lot of religious and political beliefs behind them, and that what they're doing is actually right. Meanwhile, it's just causing pain and sorrow for a lot of people who really aren't involved, and even if the people are involved, this is just actions that really should not occur to them. So, when actually looking at this, these people think that there's a lot of benefits to what they're doing. Meanwhile, what they're actually doing really has no benefit to society or to anybody, including themselves at all. I also read another book called The Terrorist Attack on America by Doris Haddock. She speaks of how America goes into countries and takes their oil and resources. My opinion on this is actually that they really don't do this. Maybe at least to a certain degree. What they do is actually they'll go into a country, and instead of imposing their force, they'll make agreements and arrangements where they'll actually end up getting these resources for other things in return. This isn't the 1600s where we're just going to impose our figure on other countries and rule them and take over. It's just not like that anymore. Another book that I read, which was Terrorism Opposing Viewpoints, and an essay written by John Ashcroft, I realized that he talks about how we really aren't, we're a lot safer today than we were on the day of September 11th, mainly because people actually know about these terrorist acts and they actually know what they're going to do and how to try and prevent these things, which I completely disagree with, mainly because on September 11th, we just didn't know about it. Terrorism was still alive and it was around for many years before that, and it's also probably been a lot around for the entire eternity. But really, what it is we just didn't call it terrorism. The Oklahoma City bombings, that was a terrorist attack. We just didn't call it that because it wasn't on a global scale. It was just on a national scale. So what we called it was, we just said it was a man who actually just blew up a building. There was something wrong with him, but that was actually a terrorist attack on his own country. So when he actually says that we are safer today because people are aware of these attacks, it's not really true. We're just aware that now many more of these attacks can happen. We can just try and prevent them. So, in conclusion, I realized that terrorism really isn't justifiable, mainly because terrorism shouldn't occur in the first place. There should never be an act that should actually warrant a terrorist attack. And in a perfect world, which I really know we don't live in, these attacks shouldn't actually happen. But since we don't live in a perfect world, I realize that maybe after something happens, people should actually think about their actions, not really go and jump the gun on things, and they really should think before they do, and maybe these terrorist attacks wouldn't happen. If one domino falls, all the rest will fall. So what we have to really do as a society is actually stop all of these dominoes from falling, and possibly at that, maybe terrorist attacks will stop. But who knows? That's just my thought. So in conclusion, I feel like terrorism is not justifiable because there really isn't an act that warrants it, and even that act really should never have occurred in the first place. So I hope you guys learned something today. Thank you. Have a good night, guys.